I delivered pizza to the same house 3 times in one night. The third time, I noticed the curtains moving. This happened about 6 months ago, and I still check my rearview mirror every time I leave a delivery. I was working the closing shift at Marco's Pizza on a Tuesday night in October. It was one of those slow, dead nights where you're basically just cleaning and waiting for the clock to hit 11 p.m. I remember it was drizzling, not hard enough to need wipers on full blast, just that annoying mist that fogs up your windshield. My phone was at 34% battery because I'd forgotten to charge it before my shift, and I had this Arctic Monkeys playlist on shuffle that kept playing the same 3 songs. Around 9:15 p.m., we got an order. Large pepperoni, extra cheese, delivery to 4228 Oakwood Terrace. Nothing weird about it. The guy on the phone, let's call him Dan, sounded normal, maybe a little quiet, but whatever. He paid with a card over the phone and left a $5 tip, which was decent. I grabbed the pizza, plugged the address into my GPS, and headed out. Oakwood Terrace was about 15 minutes away, one of those older suburban streets with big trees and houses set way back from the road. The kind of neighborhood where people leave their porch lights on, but you can't see into the windows because of all the shrubs. When I pulled up to 4228, the house looked fine. 2 stories, tan siding, a dim porch light. There was a car in the driveway, a dark sedan, maybe a Honda, but I didn't think much of it. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Dan opened the door almost immediately, like he'd been standing right there. He was maybe late 30s, average height, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. Nothing about him screamed dangerous. He smiled, thanked me, took the pizza, and closed the door. The whole interaction lasted maybe 10 seconds. But here's the thing. As I was walking back to my car, I noticed the living room curtain move. Just a tiny shift, like someone had been watching me leave. I glanced back at the house, and the curtain was still again. I told myself it was probably his wife or a roommate. No big deal. I got back in my car and drove to the next delivery. At 9:58 p.m., we got another order. Same address, 4228 Oakwood Terrace. I was in the middle of folding boxes when my manager called it out, and I remember stopping mid-fold and just staring at the ticket. It was another large pepperoni, same customization, same phone number, same guy. My manager, Eddie, looked at me and shrugged. Maybe he's having a party or something. I didn't say anything, but my stomach did this weird little flip. It wasn't that strange. People order multiple pizzas all the time. But something about it felt off. Why wouldn't he just order 2 pizzas the first time? Why wait 40 minutes and call back? I tried to shake it off. I grabbed the second pizza and drove back to Oakwood Terrace. This time, when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the car was in a slightly different spot. Like it had been moved and parked again. The porch light was still on, but dimmer somehow, like the bulb was dying. I walked up to the door and knocked. Again, Dan opened it almost instantly. Same hoodie, same flat smile. He thanked me, took the pizza, and started to close the door. But then he stopped. The door was halfway closed, and he poked his head back out. Hey, what time do you guys close? I hesitated. 11? He nodded slowly, like he was processing that information. Then he said, "Cool, thanks again," and shut the door. I stood there for a second, my hand still holding the empty pizza bag. That question felt wrong. Not threatening exactly, just unnecessary. Why would he need to know when we closed? As I turned to leave, I saw the curtain move again, this time in an upstairs window. A shadow shifted behind it, but I couldn't make out a face. I speed-walked back to my car, got in, and locked the doors immediately. My hands were shaking a little as I started the engine. I told myself I was being paranoid. He probably just wanted to know if he could order again before we closed. That's all. But the whole drive back, I kept checking my mirrors. At 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes before closing, we got a third order. Same address, same pizza. Same guy. This time, I didn't even try to hide my unease. I looked at the ticket and said, "Dude, this is weird, right?" Eddie looked at me and then at the ticket. "Yeah, it's weird, but it's almost closing time. Just take it and come straight back." I didn't want to go. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to go back to that house, but I also didn't want to look like I was overreacting. I didn't want Eddie to think I was being dramatic or paranoid. So I grabbed the pizza, got in my car, and drove back to 4228 Oakwood Terrace. The closer I got, the worse I felt. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my palms were so sweaty I could barely grip the steering wheel. The drizzle had turned into light rain, and my headlights cut through the dark street like searchlights. When I pulled up to the house, everything looked the same. Same porch light, same car in the driveway. But this time, the front door was open. Not wide open, just cracked about 6 inches, like someone had opened it and walked away. I sat in my car for a full 30 seconds staring at that door. My phone was down to 11% battery. The rain tapped against the windshield. My playlist had stopped and the silence felt suffocating. I should have driven away. I should have called Eddie and told him I wasn't delivering this pizza, but I didn't. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe Dan had opened the door early because he saw my headlights. Maybe he was in the bathroom or something. I grabbed the pizza, got out of my car, and walked up to the porch. The rain was cold on the back of my neck. I knocked on the doorframe. "Hello, pizza delivery?" No answer. I knocked again louder this time. "Hello?" Still nothing. I pushed the door open a little further and peeked inside. The lights were off. I could barely make out the shape of a couch and a coffee table in the dim glow from the porch light. "Dan, you there?" That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Coming from somewhere deeper in the house. Not toward the door, away from the door. Like someone was walking toward the back of the house. And then I heard a second set of footsteps. Faster. Coming from upstairs. My stomach dropped. I took a step back and that's when I saw him. Dan was standing at the top of the staircase, just barely visible in the darkness. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring down at me, and he wasn't smiling anymore. I didn't wait to see what he was going to do. I dropped the pizza on the porch, turned, and ran to my car. I heard the front door slam open behind me as my hands fumbled with my keys. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped them. I got in, locked the doors, and floored it out of that driveway. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was back at Marco's. Eddie took one look at me and knew something was wrong. I told him everything. He called the cops. 2 officers showed up about 20 minutes later. They drove out to 4228 Oakwood Terrace to do a welfare check. When they got there, the house was empty. The front door was still open, the pizza was still on the porch, but there was no car in the driveway and no one inside. The officers said the house had been for sale for 3 months. It was supposed to be vacant. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. When they checked the upstairs bedroom, the one where I saw the curtain move, they found a phone on the floor. My phone number was pulled up on the screen along with my full name, my car model, and my license plate number. The police think Dan had been planning something. They found zip ties in the kitchen drawer and a roll of duct tape in the garage. They told me I was lucky I ran when I did. I quit Marco's the next day. I don't deliver pizza anymore, and I will never ignore my gut again. I quit Marco's the next day. I don't deliver pizza anymore, and I will never ignore my gut again. But that's not where the story ends. About a week after the incident, I got a call from Detective Ramirez, one of the officers who'd gone to the house. He asked if I could come down to the station to answer some follow-up questions. I figured it was just routine stuff, maybe filling out some additional paperwork or identifying evidence they'd found. When I got there, Detective Ramirez led me to a small conference room. There was another detective there too, Detective Chen, and she had a laptop open in front of her. "We need to show you something," Ramirez said. His voice was calm, but I could tell he was being careful with his words, like he didn't want to freak me out. Chen turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was security camera footage from a gas station about 2 miles from Oakwood Terrace. The timestamp showed it was from that same Tuesday night around 10:30 p.m., right between my second and third delivery. The footage showed a dark sedan pulling up to a pump. The driver got out, and even though the video quality wasn't great, I recognized him immediately. It was Dan. Same gray hoodie, same build. But that's not what made my blood run cold. He walked into the gas station, went straight to the counter, and asked the clerk something. The clerk shook his head and pointed toward the back of the store. Dan nodded, then walked toward the bathroom area, but he didn't go into the bathroom. Instead, he stopped at a bulletin board near the hallway, one of those community boards where people post flyers for yard sales and lost pets. He stood there for a moment, looking at the board. Then he pulled out his phone, took a picture of something, and walked back to his car. The footage ended. "What was he taking a picture of?" I asked,
though part of me already knew the answer. Detective Chen pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a photo printout, a flyer. It was a now hiring poster from Marco's Pizza, and right there at the bottom, in small print, it listed the store hours, the address, and a note that said, "Delivery drivers needed, flexible night shifts available." My mouth went dry. "We think he was planning this for a while," Ramirez said. "The phone we found in the house, it had photos of the Marco storefront, the parking lot, and your car. We pulled the metadata. Those photos were taken 3 days before the first delivery." 3 days. He'd been watching me for 3 days. Chen leaned forward. "We also found something else in the house, in the basement." She slid another photo across the table. It showed a small room, more like a crawl space, with a single metal folding chair on the center. On the floor next to the chair were more zip ties, a roll of duct tape, and a car battery with jumper cables. I felt like I was going to throw up. "We think he was using the house as a staging area," Chen continued. "It's been vacant for months, so no neighbors would notice activity. He probably picked it specifically because it was isolated and off the main road." "But why me? Why target a pizza delivery driver?" Ramirez exchanged a glance with Chen before answering. "Because you're predictable. You show up alone, usually unarmed, and you're expected to come right to the door. It's the perfect setup for someone looking to abduct a victim without drawing attention." The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "We also found receipts in the trash," Chen said. "He'd been ordering food delivery, not just pizza, but Chinese food, sandwiches, grocery delivery, from multiple services over the past 2 weeks. Different drivers, different companies. We think he was testing responses, seeing how different drivers behaved, looking for the right target." "And I was the right target," I said quietly. Ramirez nodded. "You were young, you drove alone, and based on the timestamps of your previous deliveries to other addresses that week, he probably figured out your route patterns and usual shift times." I felt sick. This wasn't just some random creep. This was someone who'd studied me, planned it out, and I'd almost walked into his trap. "Have you caught him?" I asked. The detectives went quiet. That was answer enough. "We've issued a warrant for his arrest. We have his phone, his fingerprints from the house, and the vehicle registration from the gas station footage. His real name is Daniel Kovach. He's got a record, 2 prior arrests for stalking in another state, both cases dropped because the victims refused to testify." "So he's done this before?" "We believe so. We're working with agencies in Oregon and Nevada to see if there are any cold cases that match his MO." Chen closed the laptop. "In the meantime, we need you to be careful. Change your routine, don't post your work schedule on social media. If you see anything suspicious, and I mean anything, you call us immediately." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. He knew where I worked, he knew my car, he probably knew where I lived. "We've increased patrols in your neighborhood," Ramirez added, like he could read my thoughts. "And we've notified your employer. They're installing additional security cameras in the parking lot." I left the police station in a daze. The whole drive home, I kept checking my mirrors. Every car behind me felt like a threat. Every shadow looked like someone watching. It's been 6 months since that night, and they still haven't found Daniel Kovach. His car was discovered abandoned in a Walmart parking lot 3 days after the incident. His phone last pinged off a cell tower near the interstate heading west, and then nothing. Detective Ramirez calls me every few weeks with updates, or lack thereof. They've connected him to at least 2 other cases, a food delivery driver in Oregon who disappeared for 36 hours before escaping from a storage unit, and a woman in Nevada who reported a suspicious man following her home from work. Both victims described the same MO, someone who seemed normal at first, then escalated slowly, testing boundaries. I've moved since then. Different city, different job. I work in an office now. No more night shifts, no more driving to strangers' houses. I've changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, and I never, ever answer the door unless I'm expecting someone. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that third delivery. I think about how close I came to walking into that house. I think about the chair in the basement and the jumper cables on the floor. I think about what would have happened if I had been just a little more polite, a little less willing to trust my instincts. And I think about the fact that Daniel Kovac is still out there somewhere, still planning, still watching, still waiting for someone else to ignore the red flags.